As more and more developing nations, including some of the world's largest economies, decide to ditch the dollar in their bilateral trade, voices of concern and even despair are being heard in the US over the looming end of America's global financial dominance.
The BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are in the process of creating a new currency, which does not come as a surprise to those who have been following recent news about the instability of the current global reserve currency and its expected decline in value. It's expected that India and Russia will lead the formation of a financial relationship to establish a new common currency, according to State Duma Deputy Chairman Alexander Babakov.
Indian rupee trade could be an alternative. India and Russia can trade without the US dollar.
In a major move, the Reserve Bank of India has issued a circular for international trade settlement in Rupee.
During the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, the currency that will become the common denominator has not yet been announced, and it remains unclear whether it'll be the Chinese Yuan, Russian Ruble, Indian Rupee, or something else. However, what is clear is that it will be a central bank digital currency. The focus should be on writing new rules in the financial sphere to enable the use of common currency, regardless of whether it is a digital ruble, digital rupee, digital yen, or something else. Babakov emphasizes that the currency must follow the laws of the respective nations. Countries such as Japan, Brazil, and India have been supportive of central bank digital currencies. China has been a frontrunner in the competition for central bank digital currencies, having advanced in digital yen pilot programs for the past few years. It's essential to understand that this move will present a significant obstacle to the United States dollar, even for the chance to maintain its value in the long run. The currency that BRICS aims to establish will be backed by gold or other rare earth elements, providing it with tangible value. This is unlike the US dollar, which is solely backed by the US government and not supported by any valuable asset. China and Brazil recently came to an agreement to conduct their trade transactions in their own currencies, which completely avoids using the dollar.
Some changes are coming even for a dominant currency such as the dollar. It could become a less important payment currency in international transactions.
It allows us to have a great demand for our currency and for our bonds. So it often allows us to live a bit beyond our means, so we can borrow easily and at low interest rates in the world to finance economic growth.
However, this is not the only indication that the world's reserve currency is facing challenges. An official from Russia announced last week that the BRICS countries are collaborating to create a new currency. This development further suggests that the dominance of the dollar is diminishing. According to Alexander Babakov, the deputy chairman of the Russian Legislative Assembly, shifting towards using national currency for transaction is just the initial phase. Recent oil agreements between India and Russia have already utilized currencies other than the dollar for settlement. He suggests that a new single currency, possibly backed by gold or other valuable resources like rare earth elements or soil, may emerge within the bloc. BRICS, which is comprised of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, represent roughly 40% of the world's population and 25% of global GDP. The report states that last year, Iran officials applied to join BRICS, and several other nations such as Saudi Arabia, Algeria, UAE, Egypt, Argentina, Mexico, and Nigeria have expressed their interest in becoming part of the bloc, according to the Cradle. The acronym BRIC was originally coined by Jim O'Neill, former Goldman Sachs chief economist. In a recent paper published by Global Policy Journal, O'Neill recommends expanding the BRICS bloc. He points out that the US dollar has an overly dominant role in global finance and that its value and the knock-on effects have been dramatic in response to the Federal Reserve Board's period of monetary tightening or loosening. Many countries are therefore seeking to minimize their exposure to the dollar. This is due to the US government's profligate borrowing, spending, and money creation, which is eroding confidence in the greenback. Moreover, the use of the dollar as a foreign policy weapon by the US government makes many countries wary of relying solely on dollars. For years now, several members of the BRICS deal have been planning to create an alternative to the United States dollar.
Is the United States dollar under threat?
We should prepare to lose our position as holder of the world's reserve currency. That is happening in slow motion. It's unmistakable.
I think I will use the word doomed in the long term.
In 2022, the International Monetary Fund reported that central banks were not holding the US dollar as reserves in the same quantities as in previous years. However, it wasn't until last year that the issue became one of the top agendas. In 2022, Russia began exploring stable coins and even planned to create a joint stablecoin with Iran. The stablecoin would be backed by gold and used for cross-border trade between the two countries. If you've been following my updates, you may recall that 114-plus countries around the world are at various stages of development in CBDC progress. The majority of them have already launched pilot programs or are researching national digital currencies. In the context of BRICS, China has already launched its digital yuan, and Russia planned to launch its digital ruble on April 1, 2023.
World's largest oil producer, Saudi Arabia, is reportedly asking to join BRICS.
You'd rather be invested right now when you look at the world as a whole. For many people, the answer is the US.
However, the rollout was indefinitely postponed due to the regulatory framework not being fully finalized. According to the same report, the legislation concerning CBDC is expected to be approved by the Russian State Duma in the upcoming month and come into effect on May 2023. The trial period of the digital ruble in Russia is set to involve 13 banks. BRICS countries are moving towards reducing their reliance on the US dollar, with China and Brazil having entered into a bilateral agreement to trade in their own currencies. South Africa, a member of BRICS, recently sent a senior official to Russia to discuss recalibrating the global order with Putin and is hosting a BRICS summit in August. The new currency, whether it's digital yen, rupee, or something else, will likely diminish the value of the US dollar and reduce its dominance in global markets. Those in favor of dollarization argue that it will decrease other countries' reliance on the US dollar and the US economy, which is currently weakening. BRICS nations believing that moving away from the dollar will help them mitigate the impact of economic and political changes in the US on their economies, reduce exposure to fluctuations and interest rate changes, and improve economic stability. According to a Bloomberg report, the yen has surpassed the dollar as the most traded currency in Russia. If the BRICS nations go ahead with their plans for a new currency, it could stabilize their economies amidst the events in the West. However, it's unclear who will benefit the most from the new currency, whether it's China, India, or Russia. The U.S. relies on the global demand for dollars to support its excessive borrowing and spending habits. The dollar's status as the world's reserve currency allows America to accumulate massive budget deficits and an ever-growing national debt.
We must protect the position of the American dollar as a pillar of monetary stability around the world.
The system could help India promote its export and facilitate trade with countries under sanction,
since there is a built-in global demand for dollars in U.S. treasuries. However, this could change if BRICS decides to create its own currency and no longer requires dollars for trading. If the demand for dollars decreases, the value of the dollar will diminish, resulting in more significant inflation for Americans. In the worst-case scenario, this could lead to a complete collapse of the dollar. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Also, like, subscribe, and share the channel if you liked the video.
People use the dollar because they've always used the dollar.
But I think I will use the word doomed in the long term.
Dollar for the last couple of decades has been the preeminent global currency in virtually every dimension you can think of.